So I would want to basically start asking you about this course, hybrids, walk-in starseed in crop circles.
Right.
There's a lot in there,
Yes,
and
a lot of material.
yes, yeah, it seems like a convergence of many topics in the ET world that some may think are not connected, and now here they are presented kind of as unified phenomenon. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you've been working on for a long time to get these connections?
Yes, well, I've been doing this particular part of my work beginning in 1991, and I'm still doing a lot of it. So my focus is mostly on uh, people's experiences with the extraterrestrial beings. I do not go into talking about the crafts or UFOs or sightings, but more about people's actual personal encounters with the beings. And there are many, many different aspects of that. So I had submitted um, a paper with sort of a bullet point description of each module that I'll be teaching, so that through the whole course, it will be including a lot of different aspects. And not only um, people's experiences with the beings when they have these encounters, um, but and what happens, in those experiences. That's all very interesting. But also, I will go into some of the indications that we have that the beings, or at least many of them, um, are very concerned about humanity and about the earth. And so I go into various ways in which these beings uh, give indications of that. Uh, some of the messages that they've given to people, individual people, and how they give them, and also messages that appear in the crop circles, which many of us understand to come from the extraterrestrial intelligence. So it covers a whole lot about the phenomenon of the beings and our having encounters with them.
Right. Yes, there seems to be a different type of beings in contact with us with different agendas as well, right? Some are more hands-on, others are more warning us, whereas there's also this phenomenon of hybrids where it's almost about mingling with our species.
Well, yes, and there are many reasons that the beings give for doing the hybridization, and it's important, I think, for me to get across the idea that there are two basic kinds of hybrids. One of the kinds is where they are more extraterrestrial in genetics and components, and then they are human, and therefore they live their whole lives on the ships or on other planets. In other words, they do not really come here except for very brief visits. They do not come here to live on Earth. That's one type. Then the other type is the ET human hybrids who are born here, having been hybridized at conception or during life in the mother's womb. And they're born here and they live their whole lives here, looking, acting like humans. People might notice that they have more psychic skills and healing skills and so forth than most people do, but they look and act like regular humans. And those hybrids are created and sent here by the extraterrestrials in order to really help humanity. And they live a whole lifetime of service in various ways. So I always like to really make that distinction between the hybrids who are mostly extraterrestrial and live on the ships with the other beings whose genetics they have, and partly human. And there's a tremendous group of those, I mean, thousands and thousands that people have reported in various ways in their encounter experiences. So we're learning more about that all the time. And then more and more people are coming forth, having been aware of some of my work about the hybrids who live here. And more and more people are coming forth suggesting that they think that they might be hybrids because of
Hmm.
these characteristics. So that's interesting that we may have more and more with us, but it has nothing to do with infiltrating or taking over humanity. It's completely benevolent, as far as I can see from all the people I've worked with.
No, that's interesting. And would you say that what you're talking about now is different from the concept of star seeds that's also in the title?
Well, star seeds are similar in the sense that they are here for service to humanity, living as regular people, looking as like a regular person, uh, but they do not have the genetics from extraterrestrials that
Hmm.
the hybrids have. And there's another feature too, um, that they had lineage, in other words, previous lifetimes as extraterrestrials.
Right.
They have a connection with the extraterrestrials, and as they go through their life, um, they have visits, encounters. Um, they receive messages from them, channeled messages, encouragement to keep on doing their benevolent work here. So, in other words, there are many extraterrestrials who live away from us, of course, very far away, but they would like to be here to help humanity and help individual people. But they cannot, they could not live here. They could not withstand our density or bacteria or viruses and so forth. And they don't look human enough to be accepted here. So they have developed this way of creating the hybrids who will be born here with mostly human genetics and some extraterrestrial genetics, and
Hmm.
connection with them, ongoing lifelong connection with them. And those hybrids can be here to do the work that the beings would like to see done here.
Wow.
It's really quite an ingenious way of helping.
Hmm.
They recognize our differences from them, as well as in many ways our similarities. But uh, it's all for caring and helping, and I think that that is really wonderful. And I think many people probably, if they have any awareness of this subject at all, um, they probably think of aliens and abductions, those sort of nasty ways of looking at it. And there are some beings, I always have to mention this, that are more self serving, more cold hearted from our point of view. And they may be actually helping people, but people don't realize it. That's where the regressions can be very, very helpful because we can go back into a particular experience that a person has had and go through every moment of the experience with the beings, right from the very beginning of being taken right through to being returned. And we find that even the most sort of cold, unfeeling, seeming types of people or beings uh, very often are really helping that person they have taken. In other words, I go into the healings. There are many, many instances of humans being taken on board a craft and healed of all kinds of uh, difficulties that they have, including really serious ones like heart problems and cancer and so forth.
Mm.
And so that's a very important thing. And then, of course, as the beings are working on a person, the person may not experience them as warm and fuzzy and friendly. They may experience them as kind of matter of fact and kind of cold hearted, even. And yet they are doing these miraculous healings. And in many cases, if they detect a problem in the person's body, um, they will tell the person that they have a problem with their pancreas or liver
Yeah.
or wherever, and they advise them strongly to check with their own doctor when they come back to Earth and tell the doctor to check that particular organ and then get help, medical help here. But in more cases that I know about, they actually go right ahead and heal the person right then and there on board the craft when the person is lying on a medical table. And then there are many cases that have come to me where a person has a severe malady of one type or another, and the beings come to that person's room here on Earth and heal them right there in their own bed or their own sofa or wherever the person is. So that I think is a wonderful thing as well. And
Mm.
I really like to have people know about these things because I think there's so much fear
Yeah.
around the subject and projection of negative ideas. And
Okay, so that's an important point. So you would say, um, based on the thousands of regressions that you have done over many decades now, the image in the media of abductions being basically a negative phenomenon by default is skewed. It's not based on the actual experiences of the people you have.
that's right, or at least I should say, on the experiences of many people. There are some beings, apparently, they have not come to me, the work has not come to me in my practice, but um, I read reports of other people, particularly in other parts of the world, South America and so forth, uh, where frightening beings have come, and the experience seems to be very negative. But I hasten to say that those people who give those reports, as far as I know, have not had regressions to
Mm.
determine what actually happened. So there may be a lot of misperception about these encounters. And of course, the beings are different, and that is startling to us and takes a while to get used to. And also, people are very shocked to suddenly have mysterious things happen, like a beam of light coming in their room at night from the sky, or suddenly beings of an unusual nature right there in the room, or orbs flying around in the room, and then beings appearing.
Yeah.
And so, uh, it can be very disconcerting at the least and very frightening to many people. And that's why I think it is just wonderful that we have a method which we call hypnotic regression,
Hmm.
go back into one of those experiences and relive it all the way through and then find out what really happened. And so often when a person has been really fearful about having these encounters, that they find out that, oh, they have really been helped. And in some cases, they've been taught. They've been taught healing of other people. They've been taught psychic skills, a
Right.
whole raft of psychic skills, and many other very useful, helpful aspects that they never would have guessed, just from their conscious life.
Right. So you would say, um, in most of the cases you have seen, the interest of these ETs goes beyond of just probing this species on this planet, a bit like we would do with a polar bear in the Antarctic that we just grab and put a an implant in and then just to study it. You would say they have an empathy and recognition of us as, let's say, other as cosmic family. It is a certain regard, loving regard. That's what you would say, or
Yes, many, many, many of them do. Um, and the implants, it
right.
turns out, have a lot of different purposes. I think the one that people think of most often is that the implant is for the beings tracking them and finding them wherever they are, whenever it's time to have another encounter. And yes, indeed, the implants do serve that purpose, but they serve other purposes too, which we are more in favor of. And
Hmm.
uh, for instance, they often will communicate with the person as the person is just going about his or her life, and or maybe in meditation, or just doing something sort of routine and quiet. They will give messages of things that uh, would be helpful for the person to do to help himself or herself, um, or they give lots of messages um, about their intentions, about their concern for the world, for the earth and humanity. Um, Many people occasionally feel that they receive a download of information, like a whole packet of information, and that is actually coming through the implant. These people are not natural channelers, but they can just suddenly get this in their mind. And many people feel that um, it's because the beings are communicating with them. And also, sometimes people who have an implant will, on occasion, feel that implant sort of humming or buzzing or vibrating. There may or may not be a sound with it. And that often is a warning for those people that very soon, in other words, within a few hours probably, the beings will be there for another encounter. So they just kind of prepare the person. It's not to terrify the person, although it
Hmm.
might terrify the person until they realize what's going on. But just kind of a little gentle reminder, okay, we'll be knocking on your door in the middle of the night tonight, so to speak. Yeah.
And
Uh,
Barbara, tell us, how did you first get into this? You're a trained psychotherapist?
right. Well, I was a psychotherapist licensed since 1976. And in the mid 1980s, um, I was very inspired to take training in being a past life regression therapist. So I took that training for 5 years in the 1980s and developed a lot of interest in that work. a lot of skill in it. Mostly that work took us to people's past lives, to the source of a particular issue that a person had, and that would take us into a past life that had caused that issue. So it was a regular part of my therapy practice that I did not with every client, but with some, and found that that was very effective and very helpful for those people. That's the main thing. And then in that last module of training, which was 1988, the woman training us said that being regression therapists, we needed to know that sometime it could happen that someone would come to us with the complaint that they had had these encounters with very unusual beings of some sort and taken away for a while and returned, and that they were totally confused and baffled and often had nobody to talk to about this. So just be aware that you might have somebody come to you like that someday. Well, right, I was very surprised. This was 1988, and I had not at that time been aware of UFOs or other kinds of beings. I had, well, I had heard of them in a science fiction sort of way. I assumed it was all interesting science fiction. But right after the training woman said that, I heard a big voice in my head really loudly, imperatively saying to me, "Pay attention to this, Barbara. You will be doing this." So I was totally stunned, cognitive dissonance, and thought, "Oh, what? Wow, I don't know about this." And then I began to realize that I was searching for magazines and books in bookstores and magazine shops um, for any kind of information that there hopefully would be about this. There was one magazine, Omni magazine, that every month in their issue, they would have one page about people being abducted by aliens. So I began to build up a little awareness, and um, there were a couple of lectures that I went to about this at whole life expos, and gradually came to realize over a period of 3 years that, well, I guess this must be true. I guess this must be happening, although you certainly don't hear much about it. And one day, when I was taking a shower and just had that free thinking time, and this was in the spring of 1991, um, I had the thoughts that, you know what, if anybody ever comes to me having been encountered with these beings and taken away, that I could manage that because I'm very accomplished now in doing regression work, and it always seems to be very helpful for the person. So, yeah, I could handle that if it would ever happen, not thinking that it would. But 2 hours later, after having those thoughts in the shower, I was in a metaphysical bookstore, and the woman behind the counter recognized me as a regression therapist and asked if I would work with her daughter, who was highly traumatized by all the unusual visits from these beings that she was having. So I worked with her for 6 sessions, and we went into a different experience that she had had in each one of those regressions. And she discovered that she had been healed on one occasion. She had had a hybrid baby that she had not been consciously aware of. And it all connected with certain weird clues that she had had during her life. And Anyway, she realized that she was having these extraterrestrial encounters, and having been healed 2 times by the beings, once by a beam of light and once by beings in her room actually working on her ear and healing a very severe ear infection. So the 7th session, she came in all smiles and relaxed and saying, I have decided that I am very pleased that I am involved in this phenomenon, that I have a relationship with these beings, many of them which are very, very helpful, although they are very different. And she said she was moving out into the wilderness cabin with her boyfriend, and it would be just fine with both of them if she would continue to be visited by these beings. So, what a wonderful opener that was for me in getting into this work. And I didn't think that anybody else would necessarily ever come, but it would be fine if they did. But in that same year, a few months later, there were 4 other people independently who came for regressions to their unusual extraterrestrial encounters. And then it
Mm.
just built from there. Um, Groups like the MUFON groups and others started asking me to come and give a lecture about what I was learning. And I did
Mm.
that. And then very often there were 2 or 3 people in that audience who would come to me
Right.
afterwards.
Synchronicities, one thing leads to the other, and you made a name for yourself in this. Yeah, yeah, that's quite
Right.
astonishing. And it's also almost funny that this biggest event in the history of this species, in a way, a civilization,
Yeah,
was given to you as a sidebar to past life regressions. It's
I know. I mean, I certainly never ever
yeah.
guessed such a thing.
But
As,
the people that were doing the live, the past life regression, they were not into the phenomenon. They just kind of thought it was a nuisance that this kept on popping up.
well, that was interesting for me. I continued to be very involved with the Association for Past Life
Yeah,
Research.
that's also a real thing. Yes. Yeah.
It was a whole organization, national and international. We would meet twice a year and have a conference and give workshops. And so after I was doing this work for a year or so, I thought, other regression therapists really need to know more about doing this and
Mhm.
successful ways of conducting
Yeah.
those kinds of regression sessions. So I began giving workshops at our conferences and other venues, and sort of training people. And people started coming to me for training in doing regression therapy. They were already regression therapists, but
Mhm.
special training in working with this sort of situation. And so that was really helpful to get more people doing
Mhm.
that kind of work.
I believe a question that I guess on relevant to many people is this. Well, the question if these experiences, if they're just too difficult or foreign for the human psyche to be integrated, and that's why the natural response is to suppress them,
Right.
or if the ETs themselves don't want us to remember and they do something to us. Like, what is your sense of that?
Good question. I think it's both. I think the human psyche, when encountering something that it just can't understand or tolerate, it is not familiar with knowing about it, it tends to repress what has happened, what they consciously are aware of. And the other part of it, very importantly, is that the beings have a way of, when they approach a person, after just 2 or 3 seconds, even, they will make the person be unconscious. They're not harming the person. in making the person unconscious. But it's just like they kind of turn off their conscious awareness. And they do that too for anybody who's with the person at the time that the beings approach. So a sleeping partner or someone in the room, or if it's in a situation, a more social
Mm.
situation, if the person's in a party or even in an office room full of people, uh, the beings have a way of turning off the awareness, not only of the person they're taking, but of all the other people present. And those other people are out of consciousness, not harmed, but just simply out of conscious awareness for the duration of that experience, which typically goes on for an hour and a half or 2 hours, or sometimes even a bit longer. So it's both, the person experiencing this, repressing it because it's just so unknown and bizarre for a while anyway, until the person gets more comfortable with it. So the regressions can really help the person to be more comfortable about it and even to stay conscious longer if they really, really want to and ask the beings. But we people are very reactive, we're very sensitive to things going on and sensitive to our own feelings, and we can react physically if we're suddenly startled or suddenly afraid of this
Mhm.
unknown thing happening. So that's one of the reasons why they, that is the main reason, in fact, why they make the person be immobile.
Mhm.
Many people have complained before really realizing the details of this, that they might have a flashback memory or a dream of being on a kind of a cold, hard medical type table in a
Yeah,
very,
that's a classic thing.
yeah, and not being able to move. And the not being able to move uh, is very distressing for most people who experience that. So, one of the things that I find myself trying to normalize as much as possible with people who experience these things is that, okay, you're part of a big outreach here, a big procedure. It's normal in that sense that millions of people worldwide are having these experiences. Most of them don't have anybody to talk to about that. They kind of keep it silent within themselves, which is difficult to live with keeping a big secret like that. Uh, but I think that the whole process of people being able to talk about what they are aware of about these experiences is very, very helpful.
Mhm.
I would say that every client, and it's been thousands, a few thousand people now who've come to me for regressions about extraterrestrial experiences, I would say almost all of them have said at the beginning of a session or at the end, thank goodness I can talk to you about this. Thank goodness I know that there are many others, millions of other people who are having these experiences. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just a freak. I'm not insane. And
Yeah.
many people who experience this really worry about themselves.
And
Or,
and what I'm wondering is, maybe it's a bit of a crazy question, but there may be even many, many, many more people who were abducted and they don't remember it at
yeah,
all. Maybe it's just the
yeah.
anomaly that people do remember.
Well, good point. Very good. Uh, Many people who have come to me have said that they had no awareness of anything like this until maybe a year ago. And then they started having little flashbacks, a little bleed through memories. And then they started hearing about this and they started looking for it on the internet, looking for sources that would know about this. And they've come. And then when we do a regression to the one experience that they can remember that might have been this sort of thing, uh, during that regression, very often they remember, oh, yes, I remember being with these beings. Oh, yeah, I remember when I was 17 and yeah, even earlier, when I was 10 years old, there was that time when I was playing out in the field and with my friends in the afternoon, and suddenly, next thing I knew, it was dark and my friends
Hmm.
were gone, and I was out there in the field alone. Huh, I've always wondered about that. So, in other words, in one regression to one experience, they would very often remember a whole slew of other peculiar experiences that they never knew the details of. They
It's
never,
interesting because it makes it almost feel as if these encounters are also seeding a type of transformative potential in people. And when they're ready, they may be able to then step through that door and access more of their cosmic yeah, connectedness, so to speak.
well, yes, and thanks for mentioning that too, because when people really get into this and start actually communicating with some of these beings, they do feel exactly that, a cosmic connection. And many
Hmm.
of them are spiritually awakened by being with these beings, even though the beings may seem very physical and not particularly spiritual. They don't look like what we would think of as spiritual beings in many cases. Um, but still, it opens them up to the cosmos and to spirituality, and many of them experience it as a very spiritual experience, especially after they get used to it and realize that the beings are really here to help them individually and to help humanity as a whole. So, many people develop into a much more enlightened spiritual aspect because of these extraterrestrial encounters. And very importantly, some of the beings who come for people and take them to their ships and so forth, some of those beings are what look like interdimensional beings. They don't look solid and physical as we do and as many of the beings do, but they might be almost transparent in some cases. The person experiencing them might be able to see the outline of the person and maybe a glowing area with sort of an outline. And that is actually an interdimensional being. And those beings can take people as well as the physical beings can take them. Uh, but these interdimensional beings or other dimensional beings are very inspiring, very spiritually inspiring and enlightening to those people. So that
Hmm.
even if they're taken away, it's an abduction, as some people would call it. I call it an encounter. Um, that the person can be very opened up and raised spiritually with great appreciation for that.
Yeah.
Sometimes those people and those kinds of beings have kind of an ongoing relationship where that kind of being will um, give messages
Right,
and
right.
inspirations to the person as the person is living life.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, there's so much we could go into, and that's why we have 4 weeks because this is really a wide, huge subject. I think the last question I would just want to ask is um, this sense of whether you have a sense if people on some level of their psyche agree to have these experiences,
Oh, good.
or if they're like random lab rats that, I mean, this question of, because there is a stigma of abduction that has this randomness to it.
It seems
And this
like,
is, yeah. So this is an important question. If we, as we become more kind of conscious of disclosure and the human history and this long-going relationship to NHI, maybe it's time for us to kind of reconsider this framing of abduction, which is very mechanistic. Maybe there's
yes.
also more of us having an agency in it or in a
Well,
purpose.
I'm very appreciative that you asked about this because a very important component here is that when a soul is getting ready to come into an incarnation, a lifetime on Earth as a human, that soul in sort of like a planning committee of what the person's going to be mostly coming into this lifetime to learn by experience and to achieve, to serve, to grow. In that planning session come some of these other beings, extraterrestrial beings, and the soul, in other words, of those beings will come to the soul of the person who's just about ready to take the plunge of incarnating. And the beings will ask that person if, among all the other things they're going to be doing in this lifetime they're going into, would they cooperate with them, with the other beings? And the soul of the person getting ready to incarnate agrees. Yes, among all the other things I'll do that. I'll cooperate with you. So, in other words, there's a soul agreement before the person even comes into this lifetime. And that continues through the life. And the person has these experiences with the beings with whom they made the agreement. So, it really is not just a random thing that you happen to be unlucky to be driving along and a UFO comes and stops your car and takes takes you away for an hour or so. Um, that's not random. That had
And
all,
what gives you confidence that these soul agreements exist? Oh.
well, it's come out in the regression and also with communicating with some of the extraterrestrials. Um, Along with doing this work, I had the tremendous good fortune of having one of my clients who channeled an extraterrestrial. And she came for quite a number of years for many, many sessions and many channeling sessions. So that extraterrestrial knew about many other types of extraterrestrials and what they were all about and why they uh, did these things that they do with people. And this extraterrestrial, emphasized that before we are born, our soul makes the compact, the agreement with the soul of the extraterrestrial. So they've given permission. So, just like all the other things that we humans decide for this lifetime before we come into it, all the different kinds of things we want to experience and to learn and so forth, we forget about that. We forget about all of this consciously, don't we? I mean, I think it's the rare person who has any sense that they actually made agreements before they came here, agreements with themselves and agreements with the cosmos. Some people have, and some people, it turns out, took quite a while to uh, realize this one, but it turns out that many people who have these experiences in this life with the other beings they were themselves one of those kinds of extraterrestrial beings in a previous lifetime. So you see, all of this, these kinds of ideas have been understandable and acceptable to me because of having had years of past life regression therapy and being convinced in many ways that we all have many, 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 many lifetimes. So the newer aspect of this in my awareness is that we, many of us, maybe all of us, for all I know, have had previous lifetimes, maybe long ago, but previous lifetimes as one of these species of extraterrestrial beings. So that more and more in this work that I have been doing, I've gotten the perspective of some of these extraterrestrial beings. And that has been not only fascinating, but I think very important. Their viewpoint of us here on Earth. And among those are ways that they are trying to help us. And, there's lots of speculation nowadays about how humanity came into being in the first place. And so there are apparently, it seems, many species involved in us developing as human beings from earlier types of life. And so some of the beings give quite a bit of information about that as well.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thought to end on this inversion maybe of this idea who's here as an alien. The idea that we have parts of us in our souls that have an alien experience by incarnating on Earth, and we're
Yes,
maybe just reconnecting to a part of us that is actually not foreign at all. It's
right.
an interesting thought.
Good for you. I really like your thinking and your questions. And we can keep on thinking. I think that my course will give a lot of information to people, a lot of aspects that they did not even know about, some of which they may have known about or heard about. But it will really open up our perspective as human beings. I know that I grew up and went into my middle ages of life, in this life, uh, thinking that we were the only life in the universe. And that just seemed perfectly normal. And I'm sure it does to most people. But th- this work has just opened me up incredibly and wonderfully. I mean, I think that life is so much more interesting uh, knowing that all of these things, other beings from other locations in the universe and other dimensions, that all of this is going on for many, many people. And I think that gradually it's having the effect of opening up the not only the worldview, but the universal view of more and more humans. Some of the beings are very interested in the process of ascension that some people talk about, many people talk about the earth going into another dimension and human beings going into another dimension. Many claim that that's in the process of happening right now. Some of the beings are more focused on that and are trying to acquaint us with that and help us to make that transition. That's one of the positive aspects of it.
Wow, there's so much to get into. We're all looking forward to the actual class. We're starting on May 8th, and then we have 4 Thursdays. at 11 a.m. Pacific. And we invite you all to join us and explore with us together this wild cosmos, to say the least.
Yes, and I think it's just wonderful that Ubiquity University is offering this course and all the other courses they're offering as well. So good for Ubiquity, really
Thank
helping.
you so much. Barbara, it's been a pleasure. I'm super excited about the course. And if you see this, this is your opportunity to join us and looking forward to meeting you all and talking about our experiences together. So thank you all. Thank you,
Yes,
Barbara. See you soon.